Hey, welcome to your wrist health flow. This is a short practice that's specific to wrist health, and we are going to look a little bit more specifically at your wrist extensions. So, this position in your hand and wrist, which is important for a lot of reasons, but namely when we're thinking about getting up off of the ground. If you want to use leverage and support from your hands and wrists and load those parts of your body, which can be really useful, we want to make sure that you're able to do that. So you are just going to be on the floor, on the ground, set that up in whatever way you'd like so that it's comfortable for you. We'll be on hands and knees a fair amount. So if you want to have any cushion beneath your knees, go ahead and grab a blanket or whatever it is that helps you to support your knee joints. And you shouldn't need anything else in terms of equipment. So we're going to start here just on hands and knees. Spread your fingers out, and then you can land your hands more or less beneath your shoulders. It doesn't have to be super exact. But while we're at it, why don't you tuck your toes under as well? So come into a flexed foot position in your feet, and then just start to shift weight forward and back. It's really, really simple, but what I want you to look toward when you're doing this is pressing back into your big toes. So again, with that flexed foot and toe position, you're loading into your toes and the plantar fascia as well. So kind of just an extra bonus. And then when you take your weight forward, up and across your hands, you can kind of determine how much of that is doable for you. So without causing any pain, without overloading, we do want to begin to introduce just a little bit of load as you take your trunk up and over your hands and your wrists. So for some folks, you're going to come out a little bit further, and then for others, you're going to just come into more of like a little hover right above your hands and wrists. So just keep shifting forward and back a few more times. You may find that over the course of a few repetitions, you're able to come a little bit further out, or perhaps not. So being really thoughtful about loading in a way that's, again, sustainable right now. And then, of course, over time, you can begin to incorporate a little bit more load. Now, next time you come back toward neutral, you can untuck your toes, turn your right fingertips to the right, left fingertips to the left, and then start to shift some weight from side to side. Now you may see that your elbows are wanting to bend as you shift weight from side to side. Totally fine to allow that so that it opens up more space for you to yet again load your hands and wrists. So that's the sort of objective for today. Couple more swishes and slides from side to side, and then come back to center so you can walk your hands back to your knees. A low kneeling, if this is comfortable for you. If this is too much on your feet, your ankles, or your knees, come on up to tall kneeling, totally fine as well. Then bring the tops of your hands to touch, palms facing out. Start to roll your fingertips toward your chest a few times to introduce just a little bit of rotation into the wrist joints themselves. Switch out directions. And shake out your hands. So we're going to come back to hands and knees as we were just a moment ago. And then we're going to play around with hand ups. So the movement of a hand up, and we're going to start just one hand at a time. We may or may not progress this today, but the movement is lifting the heel of your palm off of the ground. That's it. So you're going to switch from side to side, but I want you to think about firming your fingers into the ground so that you keep those base knuckles of your forefingers connected to the ground. Fine for the thumb base knuckles to lift off of the ground, but you'll still keep your thumbprint on the ground underneath you. Now you will notice as you do this that if you pull your weight a little further back, you're going to offload this position, so it'll be less of a load. And then as you take weight more so forward again over your hands and your wrists, you're going to be incorporating more body weight load on top of your hand up. So again, options for you to progress, regress in a way that's doable for you. You are going to find that as you switch from side to side and you start to stack up these repetitions, that a little goes a long way in terms of fatiguing the musculature that lifts the heels of your palms, which we like. So, we're building capacity in the muscles, in the joints, all the connective tissue. Try maybe just a few handful more. And then walk your hands back again, low kneeling or tall kneeling, and just roll out and rest your wrists for a sec here. Okay, we're gonna move into a downward facing dog type shape, so like an A-frame shape. So you're gonna take your hands down, tuck your toes under, lift your hips up and back, and then I like really, really wide feet for our purposes today. So take your feet pretty wide. If you have a mat, take them about mat width distance. If you don't have a mat, fine to just think about taking your feet wider than your hips so that you're able to put this pose a little bit more so into feet and legs. So we're looking at offloading the hands, the wrists, the shoulders a little bit more and using the resource of your lower body a bit more thoroughly for the time being. Take a few breaths. And then we're going to start to shift forward and back so that you again have this opportunity to load your hands and your wrists in extension as you come toward a plank-esque shape. So I don't really need you to worry a ton about having perfect plank form, but I want you to think more about like, oh wow, I'm creating more wrinkles at the front of the wrists, at that intersection where your hands and your wrists meet the beginning of your forearms. And then you'll take the load off. You can try that a few more times. So it's just shifting forward and back. As per usual, you will decide those parameters in terms of how much you shift forward, how much is doable for you now. And if you wanted to regress this even more, you could just come back again to hands and knees like we were doing before and shift weight forward and back. That's totally fine. Give it a little rest. Roll out, flick out your hands and wrists to whatever extent you'd like. And then let's look at quadrupeds. So again, hands and knees, but we're going to bring the knees up into a hover. So all of these different ways that you can start to look at spending time down on the ground and loading your hands and your wrists. Obviously, something as simple as a push-up is an option too. We're not going to do that today, but you'll see that in other practices as well. It's accomplishing that same task. So back on hands and knees, tuck your toes under, and then give your knees just a little hover off of the ground, and then just knee taps. So lower your knees down, lift them back up, and lower them down, lift them back up. Lower your knees down, and then this time as you lift your knees up, shift a little bit more weight forward. Pull your hips back a little ways. Drop your knees down. Let's try that a couple more times. Knees up, weight forward, weight back, knees down, knees up, weight forward, bring it back, drop your knees down. One more time since we're here. Lift your knees, take your weight forward, pull back, drop your knees down, take a rest. So, as we kind of dig into this idea of just being able to get up and up off of the ground, which is super essential to anyone who spends time in the outdoors, this is the idea of being able to load any of the wrist, any of the joint areas that need to be loaded. So wrists, hands, shoulders, hips, knees, ankles, all of the things, and being able to move dynamically is super important. Let's look at just one get up pattern really quick before we wrap up, where you do indeed load hands and wrists. And it's one that's a favorite of mine. So come into a seat on your bum. So this is the tripod get up, which many of you have probably seen with me from time to time. One that I really, really like, and one that's relatively seamless. So take your right leg ahead of you, plant the sole of your left foot on the ground. I'm propping my hands up behind me for just the time being. And then once you have your legs set up, you're going to take your two hands over to your extended right leg. So palms down on the ground, spread your fingers out. You're going to load your hands and your wrists as you shift weight over to the right. So as you start to roll over toward your hands and wrists, roll over toward your right sitting point, your left butt cheek is going to lift up off of the ground. You're going to press down into the ground to lift your right seat up, sneak your right leg behind you, walk your hands back. Different people have different range of motion available in the lower body here. So depending upon who you are and what's happening in your ankles, your knees, and your hips, your heels might be lifted or on the ground. Find either way, but see if you can square your feet and then start to lower your feet, your heels, come up to stand, and then you'll rewind and come down the same way. So you'll lower down, Bring both of your hands down for a sec here, and then you can let your left hand lift. Sneak your right leg through, so there's this large pivot through the central portion of your body, and then you're back where you began. I'll show you from the other side. So left leg forward, bend your right knee, place your right foot down, bring your two hands all the way over toward your extended left leg, anywhere that works for you. And then as you start to roll over toward your left sitting point, hands down, start to load your hands and your wrists, drive your left heel into the ground, press your right foot into the ground, lift your left butt cheek up, sneak your foot back, start to walk your hands back, and then as you're ready, you can just pop straight up and lower back down. And then rewind. So my left hand is down on the ground, and then you're pivoting across your feet so that you can sneak your left leg underneath you and extend your leg out long. And that is it. So this is sort of just an introduction in terms of how you can begin to spend a little bit of time loading hands and wrists and extension and get up off of the ground by using those ranges of motion. And we will follow up with plenty more. Thank you all.